We get together on Sunday nights to meet everyday Orthodox Christians. We're hoping to get to know the members of the body of Christ across all of our various jurisdictions and regions. We may worship in various languages or even on different calendars, but we have so much in common. Come get to know someone new and see how they're living out this Orthodox faith in another corner of the world. After all, every person is an icon of Christ, and as we'll see, every person has a story to tell. If you have a question for tonight's guest, we invite you to call in and join the conversation at 1-855-237-2346. That's 1-855-AF-RADIO. Now, here's Elisa.
It is Sunday, November 27th, 2022, and we're live on Ancient Faith Radio. Welcome to Everyday Orthodox. I'm Elisa Bielatich-Davis, and we get together here every Sunday night to meet a new Orthodox Christian. And I just feel that it's so beautiful to be able to reach out across all of the diverse Orthodox people. You know, we don't necessarily know people in other jurisdictions and other regions. And what a beautiful thing for all of us to be connected and to hear each other's stories. And in particular tonight, I think we have what's probably going to be one of our best episodes ever, because we have one of my favorite people ever tonight. But so you're going to be welcome to call in tonight if you have any questions. The number is 1-855-AF-RADIO. That's 1-855-237-2346. And of course, Matushka Trudy Richter is right here engineering the program, and she's taking your calls. I say right here. She's actually at the Ancient Faith Studios in Chesterton, Indiana, and I'm in Texas. But look, it's like we're right next door to each other. It's fantastic. Okay, tonight's guest is my friend Kassiani. And Cassiani, of course, is her baptismal name. Cassiani also has a birth name, but we're not going to tell you what it is, because Cassiani heads the Chinese language division here at Ancient Faith Radio. And so she is working on with a wonderful team of people. They are translating books. They have translated the liturgy. Last week, you met Nazo, who did the composing for this beautiful, beautiful Chinese liturgy. And it's going to be a great conversation. So without any further ado, I'm not going to introduce Cassiani. I'm going to let you get to know her, because I don't want to take another minute away from her. So Cassiani, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Alyssa. Thank you. It's so good to be here.
Oh, it's so good to have you here. And I should also say to the audience, I actually got to meet you in person, and we had so much fun. And I think we'll be like putting on musicals together. There are going to be some really fascinating things coming. But right now, we're talking about you, and I want to talk all about your life, and I want to talk about the Chinese language division and the amazing work that you guys are doing. And so let's start with the official beginning question for Everyday Orthodox. Where were you born, Kassiane?
Where was I born?
Where did your life story start?
I was born in the beautiful city of Urumqi, which anglicized as Urumqi, out in Xinjiang province, all the way in the western part of China, People's Republic of China. So that's where I was born.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you know what? You are the very first person I've ever gotten to interview on the show who was born in China. I have a Chinese friend in my parish. I'm always trying to get him on the show. I'm like, there are very few Chinese Orthodox. Come on. But
we made it. Look at us.
Finally, we have some representation. No, that's delightful. Okay. So you were born in China. How long did you live in China?
So I was in Xinjiang until I was 5 years old. And then my parents and I started moving around China for work. So I was in South China for a while, in Guangdong province, and then in Hong Kong for half a year. And then we ended up immigrating to Vancouver, Canada. So then I spent my elementary years in Vancouver, Canada, learning to recycle and be very polite and apologize a lot. And
God bless Canada. That's so wonderful.
Yes.
That's
we
awesome.
used to stand in a row on the playground and like suck the ketchup out of like little ketchup packets from McDonald's. Like that's a thing apparently up in Canada, that maple syrup and
and they have the ketchup flavored potato chips up there. Like they're kind of into the ketchup, I guess.
We are.
Yes. You people,
yes,
you Canadians.
Us, we are. Yep. So I was there until I was 12 years of age. And that's where I met Jesus for the first time with my mom. And
Ah,
we entered into a Chinese church, and then we kind of shifted around and explored a lot of different traditions, Baptists and Anglicans. And sorry, you were
well,
going to say something.
tell me about the Chinese church because I think, as you mention it, I think it's so
Hmm.
interesting because in Orthodoxy, we
Yeah.
have so many ethnic churches around North
Right.
America, and there's
Totally.
always this like it's a good thing, it's a bad thing, right? Like there are a
Yeah.
lot of blessings about it, and there are a lot of problems with it, but
Mm.
we end up having all of these Orthodox services in various languages, and sometimes it's hard to find it in English. And
Yep.
in Canada, well, and I think in general, that's actually true in
Yes.
other denominations because I remember
Yes.
growing up in California in the Bay Area, we had a
Yep.
lot of Chinese language churches and they were various
Yep.
different denominations. So tell me
Yes.
a little bit about that experience. And do you feel like you and your mom would have found Christ without a Chinese language church?
I think no. I think no. I think that was our first landing spot. We ended up also attending other English speaking churches that were, for example, the Anglican church we went to was entirely in English. And then the church that we spent the longest time at eventually was a Baptist church that was bilingual. So it was entirely in English and Mandarin. Very diverse church. The lower mainland area, shout out to my BC natives, is just so good at that. We're very, very good at finding ways to integrate communities into the same spaces. And so that was a beautiful church that we were in Vancouver. But yeah, the initial landing pad for us where we, had first contact with the gospel was a Chinese Pentecostal church. So
Oh, wow.
um,
Oh, you
fiery.
really did do the tour.
We did the full
Oh,
short
that's
of cord.
awesome.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
But
You went all the way from Pentecostal to Anglican. Like that's
we
literally
did.
like the two ends of the spectrum.
Yes, ma'am.
Congratulations. You
Yeah,
made it.
yeah, yeah. With like in the British properties up in like Vancouver.
Right?
Yeah. So
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
So it was, but that first, exposure was so important, right? Because you need to know, I will always remember what my friend who was North Korean, back in high school, I used to be a little evangelist. And so I'd just invite everybody to youth group and all that classic, right? So I'd bring my, my North Korean friend to this youth group, and he said, I said, what do you think? He's like, I don't know if I can worship this God if I don't know this God. Like, how do I worship? Because those evenings are mostly filled with slow jams, right? Lots of worship songs and hand raising, and yeah, 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 tears. And he's just like, it's difficult to worship someone you don't know. And I thought that was always it was so true and so profound. And I think that's what happened with my mom and I, is that we really needed to know the substance, the meaning in our own language, presented by our own people, right, who were already living it out. And not to mention the active way that a lot of these churches serve new immigrants. It's really a buddy system. It's a safety net, right, for those who are new immigrants coming to a different country, and don't speak a lick of English and just are lost, right, in a sea of trying to, okay, get a driver's license. Okay, how do I file my taxes, and how do I buy a house, or how do I rent an apartment? How do I send my kids to school? How do I help my kids with homework when I don't speak English, right? You could be a professor, a postdoc in China and be like an expert, right? And then you come to the States or in Canada and you're washing dishes because your degree is not recognized and your kids are, learning a different language you can't really help them with. And so that, at least when we immigrated in the late 90s, was our reality. And, the Chinese church was really the place that held these new immigrants and nurtured them and helped them. And that's how so many Chinese emigre become Christians.
Wow. That's neat. That's really beautiful. And I think you're right. I think that, and it's not just, it's obviously not just in a Chinese church, it's the way that many churches receive immigrants. And I've even seen, I came in through the Serbian Orthodox Church.
Yeah.
And it's funny because you don't see a lot of like organized charity necessarily
Mm.
like you might see in a more American church.
Yes.
Like you don't see
Yes.
everybody out there like handing out food with matching
Hmm.
t-shirts on and
Yeah.
singing
Yep.
songs. But
Yep.
a new family comes in from Serbia
Yeah.
and they have
Yeah.
nothing. And
Yeah.
all you hear is all the ladies are coming up to you. Hey, do you remember you bought those new pans? Where are your old pans? Can I get those pans? Because I'd like to give them, and it's like, we need a
Yes.
couch. We need 3 beds and a couch and this and that. And it's just like, and all the stuff just appears, right? And everybody's pitching in. It's beautiful.
That's so powerful too, right? When it's like not an institutional thing, right? When it's like exactly what you're describing, when it's natural, when it's just
Yeah.
what we do. It's
Yeah.
on a cellular level how we respond to need. It's not, how do we build an organization out of it? How do we make an activity out of it?
Yes.
But what do we
Yes.
do? Right. So, yeah, so I think that's the case. And I think what's interesting about just these different like ethnic churches across all walks of Christianity and different denominations, right? And outside of Orthodoxy, is that it's also a part of our like sort of North American inheritance, right? As they say, Sunday mornings are the are the times when people are most segregated in North America, and everyone's in their own sort of ethnic sort of groups, right, and in corners. And I think that's the way that the Orthodox Church even is organized is partially going to be influenced by that, if not directly influenced by that. And so, American Orthodoxy, yeah, or like, just American Christianity in general, the way that ethnicity registers and how it ends up organizing people is going to be uh, a mirror to what American, and Canadian um, demographics and spirituality looks like.
Wow. That That seems so obvious when you say it, but honestly, I had not thought about that, but that is so incredibly true. And we
Yeah.
really, yeah, that's how, and that's an interesting thing, right? Because there's a way in which there's sort of a good thing about, we're all gathered together and
Yes.
we love one another and we're a
Yep.
community. And then
Yep.
there's also this problem of like, oh gosh, how come I can't cross over to that community, right? Like
Yeah.
there's the I am welcome in my home. That's nice, but
Mm,
how come nobody else is welcome in my home? It's hard. Huh. Well,
yeah.
so I want to hear a little bit more about like you as a young person. And also, did you have like a big culture shock experience? You sort of eased it out, I guess, by going from China proper to Hong Kong, right? Because Hong Kong has so much British influence. And then over to Canada, it feels like maybe it was a little bit easier to make the transition through Hong Kong. But I don't know. That has to be just a crazy cultural shift for you?
Yeah. I think that my transition thankfully was longer than that. My parents were um how do I describe them? I'm sure you get that from your guests a lot. But my parents are a rare species of birds who are artistic, and that's kind of how they got their start. They were both writers, but they also just refused to accept no for an answer when it came to things that felt like common sense, right? And so for them, it was like very basic. Like if we want to have more children, we should be able to have more children. And we are not going to stop until we legally can have more children, right? And that
Right.
involves immigration and leaving behind the one child policy. Or that, we had the hukou system, which is, every single person for the longest time, you're registered to your particular municipality and you're not really allowed to leave without permission, to just go and like live somewhere else, right? And so for them, they really had to make a lot of sacrifices and decisions to just pursue a good life, and that also was a spiritual thing too. But for me, what that meant as a child was that I was constantly immersed in their like adult friend circles, and I was the little kid in the corner cracking sunflower seeds while they're like talking at 3 o'clock in the morning. I had no bedtime. It was not the best. It was also the best. And yeah, so we ended up I think I left I did was not really in school by the time I was like 6 or 7. I was pretty much traveling with them and just watching them work, and just playing by myself. And so yeah, so I was kind of roughly homeschooled, if schooled at all. And that I think was what made it feel less of a transition. It wasn't like I left a whole group of Chinese friends and then was, dropped into a Canadian environment. I was friends with my parents and interested in what they were interested in. And, they were reading all these different books and especially in religious studies and trying to find what they were calling. They were like, even from a young age, they're like, "Chen, we need to find the way. We need to find the way. What is the way?"
Wow.
And we need to find it because look, our whole family is journeying with us, and we need to know what happens when we die. We need to know where we are going, and we need to know how we can be together and how everyone's going to be okay, because the spiritual is real, but currently we don't have the answer. We need to find the answer. So they were always adamant about that, and so that was something I took to heart from a young age as well. And so for me, it was less about soccer and classes, right? It was more about, okay, like we are on a quest to find God as a family. Now,
Wow.
what is God, and who is He? Who is God, and how can we be saved? And so, as a family, I think, yeah, that was the priority. And I think coming to Canada, being able to, yeah, be immersed in a space where everyone can present, their faiths openly, and you can explore openly. You don't have to be afraid for anyone. It was an opportunity that we relished.
That is so amazing. I mean, right from like as soon as you brought up the one child policy, I
Yeah.
realized, and of course I know about that, right? But I realized, right, you have siblings. How do you
I
have
do,
siblings?
yeah, yeah.
Because they left, right? Like you
Yes,
have to
yes,
leave to be able to have
yes,
multiple
yeah,
children, or you have to
yeah,
leave to be able to seek God. Like
yeah,
that's such a profound and remarkable thing that there are such intense limitations on
yeah,
such a huge percentage of the human
yeah,
population.
yeah, on a
Lord have
huge
mercy.
aspect of your life, right? Like procreation and spiritual direction, like
Right?
meaning of your life and
These
like
are like two of the most
the
profound things.
perpetuation of your life. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Wow. Yeah.
yeah,
And there are other restrictions on other parts of your life too. I mean, it's like there's a lot. There's a lot to take in there. Wow.
yeah,
It's very difficult from an American perspective to even wrap your head around it. You know, like we
yeah,
hear it and we kind of condemn it and we're like, ah, that's awful. But to really understand what that really means is actually very difficult, I think, for us. But
yeah.
so you mentioned that the entire family is on this quest, but
Mm.
you also said that you and your mom found
Mhm.
Christ. Did your dad find a different answer?
Um, I think that, yeah, my dad is a remarkable man, and I think in many ways my mother and I are more blessed and more capable of being able to accept Christ because we are women. Um, Ironically, because within the Chinese culture, of course, men do have more power, and the twist is that actually, communism did a lot of good to
Yeah,
enhance the rights of women within the country, and allowing for women to become professionals and to have care and to have a certain degree of liberty from ancestral, sort of practices like foot
sure.
binding or what have you, child marriages, that were very oppressive and very sad for young women. But yeah, I think my dad, being a man and being a character, he's just a larger than life kind of person. He also has to deal with the fact that I think a lot of Chinese men find Christianity emasculating. To submit yourself, especially those who are kind of the self starter, go getter types, who really, my dad is very much self made, and both my parents are in pulling themselves out of abject poverty, and so. For him to then suddenly hear us giving thanks at the table, it's very like, wait, who are you thanking? Like, who's this dude? Like, what? No, what
Who do you
happens?
think provided
Okay.
you dinner?
Yes,
Like, excuse
exactly. And
me.
so, yeah, yeah, you'd think that you're telling him that his wife is seeing someone else named Jesus, right? And so it feels a little weird. I think for him, it's a challenge to power, it's a challenge to authority, and to pride, right? And honor. And so for those, for the beautiful Chinese brothers and spiritual fathers that I've met over the years who've become Christians, though, oh my goodness, this just remarkable transformation happens, and is some of the gentlest, kindest, hardest working fathers and brothers I will ever have met. My dad, he had many opportunities, and he's heard a lot, and then eventually in his life he's had a lot of challenges, and I think he's on his own journey and his little not little, big, is big, I think, wrestling match with God. And so he's still working it out. And I'm really proud of him for just attempting to. Yeah.
Absolutely.
But I will say that his journeys have taken him through a lot of new age waters. And so that's been interesting and tough.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, it's hard when there's that, when everybody's on the same journey and then they come to different stops, right? And then you get off the journey and he's
for
still on
sure.
the journey. It's hard.
He is. He is.
That's a hard thing to, I don't know, that mismatch there, that disconnect is difficult. But
Oh,
it's,
and
hmm,
yeah. No, and I was just going to amend and say that, what's interesting is I can't wait. My selfish reason for trying to participate in this ministry as well is I know that there's so many ways that he could not connect with Western Christianity. And he just could see through many of the sort of I don't know, like theological and biblical sort of incongruities, and was just not able to accept it. But as we've been having conversations in the last year about Eastern Christianity and the Orthodox tradition, he's actually very interested. But he can have interest, right, for miles, and there's not a lot of resources. And so, what can I get into his hands to read, right? For example, this morning, one of our beautiful translators just handed in his draft for On the Nativity by Saint Gregory Nazianzus, and so I'm just like so stoked, right? When these
wow.
patristic texts are getting translated now, through our collaboration between Ancient Faith and also Saint Vlad's press. I'm so stoked about all the things that I'll be able to afford to send my dad and people like him, who I think just needed to see Jesus for who he really, really is, without the condiments, without the additions and subtractions, and the sort of the off base assumptions about him.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm always blown away by the thought that I converted in 1998. And it
Wow.
was like, there were no texts in English.
Hmm.
There were a very small number of books that had been translated into English, and we
Right.
were always the recipients of translation. And I
Yes.
am so blown away that a mere 25, not even quite 25 years later, we are the ones translating. And we are the ones
Hallelujah.
we're producing writing that then gets translated, right? Like
Hey,
I have books that were
nuts.
translated into Romanian, and I'm just like, come on, Romanians, like you're
I
teaching me. Like, what is that? But it's
know.
amazing and it's so beautiful. And thanks be to God that we have this, that we're in this place where there is the freedom to
Amen.
say, oh, this is an interesting project. I want to pick that up and not be concerned and immediately be able to do it. Now,
Yeah.
so so tell me a little bit about I yeah, I'm just gonna say this. This just pops into my head and I want to say it.
Yeah. Go for it. Yeah.
So we've introduced you as Cassiani. You're Cassiani on
Hmm.
the show.
Yeah.
That's not your birth name. And so talk to me a little bit about that because you're doing a lot of work under your baptismal name, which in a sense is your true name. So there is actually something quite beautiful about it. But on
Yep.
the other hand, there's also a hiding that's happening. And that's hard. And yeah, I don't know. Talk to me a little bit about that. What is that like? And even as you're talking to me, like, are you thinking about, can I say that I was from this town? Or because I am, as you're saying, like, oh, I grew up in this town and then I moved to that
Yeah.
town. I'm like, whoa, whoa,
Right.
whoa. Let's just say West
Yeah.
China, South China. You know, like, talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, thankfully there are many, many Chinese people in the world, so I could hide behind 1.44 billion bodies, but not so easily. I mean, the thing is, it's just it's it's comes down to the molecular organization of sort of East Asian cultures, right? Where I've talked about this before with Father Andrew on his show, and just that we really are a collective bunch, and we see the organizing social unit is the family. It's your community. That's what defines who you are, right? It's not what makes you special. It's not what makes you exceptional. It's what makes you belong. That actually makes you who you are. And so it's very drastically different from this more sort of modern, secular, Western individualist approach where, I am my own hero, right? And so, um, Yeah, so it's the wonderful side of it, as you can tell, I'm a fan, is that I think it makes for a lot of naturally caring connective tissue between humans, and the way that I think about the world and my community and my families um, is that they really do they make me who I am, right? So that's wonderful and that's great. The downside of it is that yes, we do need to differentiate, right? It's an important part of growing up, and a lot of us children of maybe more ethnic or immigrant families do struggle with, okay, how do I differentiate from a very culturally strong, like concentrated, right? Like in terms of juice, right? Like concentrated family where there are expectations for behavior and for who you are because you are X or Y, right? Greek or Chinese or whatever. But yeah, I think within the Chinese context, the other part of it that makes it very difficult to work in ministry and mission work is that you are connected to a lot of people who could be compromised based on your behavior and your words. And so, I can, for example, if I didn't have to worry about that, I would have no qualms with coming out and saying, okay, this is who I am. This is what I believe in. This is what I experienced. This is what it's like to, see the inside of a interrogation cell, right? Like I could tell you all of that, but I can't because there is this aspect of worrying about of family members and friends and affiliates and coworkers who work with me who could be implicated based on what I share. And it's not their choice to make, right? If I choose to do something that forces everybody to suffer the consequences. And so it's a great way to really politically silence and kidnap entire groups of people is when you take someone who has that kind of cultural mindset, that like high context culture, really like believe in the communal life. And then you just threaten them, right? With like, okay, well, so and so in your network or in your family will suffer if you don't behave, that people get in line really quickly. Which is why, as you and I were talking before the interview, I think this interview would have gone very differently a week ago. This week,
Big
this
week.
week, it's a big week. It's a big week. Those of you who are paying attention to world news may have seen that there are protests blooming across China. I mean, it's actually been going on for a while, but it's just really escalated overnight. Actually, on the 26th, there was a major event in my hometown of Urumqi, where there was an apartment fire that went burnt on for 3 hours without firefighters being able to access it due to COVID restraints and barriers and blockades, and then cars that were out of batteries blocking the entrances because people had been under lockdown for 103 days, and so have never set foot outside of their doors. And so overnight, because 10 people, I think, at least perished from the fire, there have been protests across the whole country, in Shanghai and in a lot of major cities in China, and then also outside of China, actually. A lot of students on various campuses who are Chinese nationals and also just Chinese heritage Chinese folks have been piping up and speaking up and beginning to really voice their I mean, voice their disappointment, and I mean that's to put it very, very delicately, and to advocate for justice and transparency. And I told you, Alyssa, I would have, again, a week ago, not said anything about any of this. And other people who know me and work with me know that I am very careful. Not for my own sake, but both for the preservation and longevity of our ministry, but also for, again, those we could implicate. But today things are different, and we don't know where this current movement is going to go, and how much it's going to escalate. Whether or not it could be tempered by just the government in China walking back and the people acquiescing, kind of going back to business as usual. But I just have a feeling that that's not quite possible, because yeah, it's unprecedented. I want you to understand, again, another thing we would never mention last week is, 1989, when the protests happened then, that's when people of all walks of life were very transparent with their demands. And, this is 20 some years, 30 actually, some years onwards
Even more.
now, even more. I can't do math. I'm sorry.
I just know because I was a little kid. So
Oh,
it must have been a real long time ago, Kassiani, because
oh my
I am
gosh.
pretty old.
I'm
But
so, I'm so thick. Yeah, that's exactly 30 plus years. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I should know. Years ago. And, it's not really reached a level quite like that until this week. So it's a big deal. I really am soliciting the prayers of everybody who's listening within earshot. Please, 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 please pray for this nation. Pray for the people. I've said this to other friends before, but it's very, very critical to understand that the Chinese people, it's not the same as the ruling government, right? Oftentimes in the news, we see China. It's almost like a person. It's like one entity. And that's not the case. There are people who crave freedom. There are people who crave the ability to just live without, being having a heavy boot, right, on them. And it's a very real thing that they struggle with. And oftentimes they just do not have the privilege of being able to just pick up and leave. Many people are still mired in extreme poverty, and yeah, and it's a devastating thing to not be free. And so please pray for them, pray for the future of this nation, whatever shape. We will always pray for leaders, whatever form way they rule. May God, allow them to do the right thing and to govern as Christ would somehow. May God turn every evil into good. But at the same time, this is an opportunity right now for change. And I just pray for audacity and courage for everyone. And for someone like me, I'm sitting here in the safety of my home. I've I've been through a lot in country in China, but I have this privilege of being able to voice out, and point out this prayer need, and to talk to you, Melissa. I don't want to take that for granted, and I want to speak up and say, please pray for change in China. Pray that there will be relief for persecuted Christians. Please pray that there will be enough momentum to generate something sustainable, so that people in the peace and quietude of their lives can actually pursue salvation without an impediment.
well, and I think, we should always be praying for China and for everyone.
Yeah.
But especially right now, as you said, right? Like there are these interesting windows that open up in history, and you don't know what's going to come out of them or what the difference will be or what sorts of loosening, might
Yeah.
happen. And
Yeah.
so, may God reach in and take advantage of that and do good with it. But
Amen.
amen. All right, we're going to take a very short break and we're going to be right back with Kassiani. Keep in mind you're able to call in at 1-855 AF Radio. That's 1-855 237 2346. And we'll be right back.
Everyday Orthodox with Elisa Bielatich Davis will be back in a moment. Give Elisa and her guest a call at 855-237-2346. That's 855 AF Radio.
The Ancient Faith Christmas Shop is now open and is packed with beautiful gifts for your loved ones of all ages. The Ancient Faith store is your one-stop shop for Orthodox gifts and resources. Whether you're looking for cards, calendars, icons, books, jewelry, ornaments, or home altar supplies, you can choose from many options. Find gift ideas for everyone on your list when you click the Christmas Shop tab at store.ancientfaith.com.
We're back with Everyday Orthodox with Elisa Bielatich Davis. Do you have a question for Elisa and today's guest? Call in now at 855-237-2346. That's 855 AF Radio. Here again is Elisa.
And welcome back to Everyday Orthodox. We're here tonight with Kassiani, and we've been talking first about really praying for China, as there's all sorts of difficulty and tension there happening right now, and may that resolve in a positive way, in a good way. And okay, so Kassiani, I want to hear about the Chinese language division. I know that we spoke a little bit earlier about how important it was for you and your mom when
Yeah.
you heard the gospel to
Mhm.
receive that in Chinese, and not just in Chinese, but from other Chinese people. Like that it was that there's something so important, I think, about being able to connect to the gospel in your
Yeah.
own language. And now you are taking that blessing that you received and just paying it forward in the loveliest possible way. How did you get this job? How did this happen?
I don't know how I got this job. No idea. Um, I do have to really thank Father Andrew and Father Stephen DeYoung, who were instrumental in getting me connected to ancient faith and really believing in what we could potentially do together. And obviously John and the whole team at Ancient Faith for jumping in and helping me get acclimated. And we also had this spectacular um, donor who really has been instrumental in getting our project off the ground. So yeah, all of them. That's how I got here. But I yeah
So tell me real quick though. So there is,
yeah.
like, people keep saying this, and I just want to clarify. Like, so there is a particular donor who, understanding what this project meant and what it could mean to people, has largely funded it through that person's private gifts. Is that right?
I do not know if I can confirm or deny this because
Okay.
that family is very, very humble, and
Okay.
they have insisted on being as not as anonymous as possible. But
Right.
mm.
But without saying who it is, apparently somebody
Yes,
being very generous to help
yes,
with this project.
I will say that it's someone who has always, I think, been raised to believe in the power of and the responsibility that we have towards mission and evangelism. And so I think that perspective has lit a fire under all of us and really reminded us what is possible if we could just put our minds to it and not pass the buck to the next generation and really do what we can now, right? And not be so overly concerned about our own I don't know our own spiritual predicament and to the negligence of those around us. And so I think I get into that zone a lot, right? Of just like,
Mm.
oh my gosh, I'm so behind. Where am I on the spiritual ladder, right? Towards paradise. Am I on the third rung yet? Nope, not. But and just really think more about this as again as a community, like how can we ascend to the hill together towards our God, right? And not how do I secure my theosis, right? So
Right.
yeah, and I think
That's
this,
beautiful.
so this donor and all the people, honestly, just everybody at Ancient Faith, they live like this, and they make me want to be better, and they want me to they make me really want to see this through. And so it feels awesome. It just feels amazing to finally have come out this year, or actually just a few weeks ago. For those of you who are on Facebook and may have noticed a little frenzy of posts about our website, a new website that's out featuring Father Andrew and Father Stephen's books, and we're going to be adding to that website shortly as well with more books that we've translated from the Ancient Faith catalog, as well as those that we are translating with the help of Saint Vladimir's press, and especially patristic texts and stuff. And so that's all there. And then there's blogs, and there's a brand new audiobook that I just received. I'm editing right now for Arise, O God in Mandarin. And we got a volunteer who's now recording it in Cantonese. Shout out to
Wow.
Seraphim if you're listening. Thank you for doing that with a newborn baby on your lap. I mean, gosh, people have been so amazing, volunteering their time, their gifts, whatever they have. This is just how we're going to do it. It's definitely going to be our family effort. Yeah, and then
Wow.
as you know, you talked to Nazo last week. Nazo is I'm the biggest fangirl for his
He's
work.
awesome.
And
I love
yeah.
Nazo. I enjoyed Nazo so much. I knew I would, but I really enjoy him.
He's a true Israelite, in the words of Christ, in whom there is no
Yeah,
falsehood. He's very, very
that's right.
genuine person, and so talented. And so, his work is one of the reasons why my husband and I entered the church in the first place. Is his true big hymn just bowled us over. So yeah, to work on a true big hymn in Chinese with him, that's a blessing. And we are right now trying to finish up the anaphora. We're getting through the liturgy. We're headed towards our the end, and we're going to try and finish composing everything by early next spring, and hopefully test out some pieces, workshop some stuff down in Nashville, and then after that. Um, we're hopefully going to be able to serve the entire Chinese liturgy in Chinese out here in California, which will be, and it's going to be around the same, a day before the commemoration of the Holy Martyrs of China. Um, so this is the apple right now that we're working towards. It's the golden apple. We're so excited that we're going to be able to bring that to life and to fruition. Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love that. And I want to tell our listeners, if you are moved, as I am, at this amazing project, Ancient Faith actually right now has a matching donor, and they have a thing running through the 29th where we're trying to raise $50,000 by the 29th. And we have a matching donor who will match that $50,000. So, you give $10, Ancient Faith gets 20. So it's kind of neat. If you're moved to help with that, please do so at ancientfaith.com. It's our Giving Tuesday 2022. And if you're listening on the podcast, you can give later too. That's good also.
Yeah.
but, but,
Well,
you know,
it's
I, yeah.
yeah. I was just gonna plug that too, because one of the things that's beautiful about Ancient Faith working in the Chinese language is we are actively trying to keep these resources free. Now, Alyssa, does it cost money to make these resources? It absolutely does. It costs a lot of money and a lot of time and a lot of hard work. And this is just like, I think oftentimes, and you'd understand this, a lot of church musicians, I think oftentimes face this, right? It's like things that happen in church. I think people oftentimes can just assume that it just happens for free, but it's not the case. And especially when we're trying to put quality products together and really offer people, the best, right? It takes resources. It takes all of us making that decision together, and putting our heads together towards it. So yeah, please, actually, if you can, donate to Ancient Faith so that they can continue doing this great work.
So the new website is open now?
Yeah,
Like,
website is live. It's
wow.
yeah, 古道事工.org. So that's GUDAOSHIGONG.org. And it's live. It's got all that stuff in. It's got scripture readings, and then we're going to add to it. So website is live. It's free. Everything, the ebooks. Thank you, fathers who wrote those books and have donated those to be free. Yeah, for people to download. And then of course the liturgy itself that we're currently making, the donor behind our work has explicitly asked that we make it and keep it free. And so you can actually, if you are hearing about this for the first time, you can actually go to the Ancient Faith store and go to downloadable music, and it's actually available. The first demo album is available for free. You can just download it and listen to it tonight. So
And
yeah,
it's
do it.
beautiful. I mean, I do not understand Chinese, obviously, but I know every word because the
Your
liturgy, and
spirit
I already
does.
know the words, right? So,
Yes.
but
Yeah.
I loved when you and I were talking I think it was actually when you were speaking to everyone at the Ancient Faith Conference, you
Yeah.
talked a little bit about drawing from Slavonic, drawing from Byzantine, and then also drawing from Chinese. Tell me a little bit about that, because I thought that was really, I think that's really neat, because our liturgies all have different styles. Like we say to ourselves,
Yeah.
oh, the liturgy has never changed. It's just this one
Mm.
perfect liturgy we've always had. But actually, it did develop over time, and it developed differently in different regions. So tell me how your
Yeah.
Chinese liturgy reflects that.
Yeah. Well, I am a literary translator at heart. And I think about life a lot from the perspective of translation. And this is no different. And so, thankfully, the word translation gets appropriated in many beautiful theologically surprising ways within Orthodoxy. And so, for me, I think of us really all of us being translators within our families, within our communities, our churches. We're actively translating heaven to earth, right? We're actively trying to seek out the kingdom so that we can translate it into our lives in ways that make sense for our own context, like in our actions, right? In our words, in our behavior. Like, what does the gospel translated to behavior look like in your workplace, right? In your home. So that's one thing that I'm always thinking about. And why do we do that? We do that because we want to be translated like the saints, right? We want to be translated to heaven. We want to be, as we attempt to translate God into our lives, we are being beamed into him, right? It's that beautiful sort of John 15 connection of like, okay, if you abide in me and I'm in the Father, and then we're all in each other, and then, abiding in, right? And so I think, yeah, as we translate God, we are being translated into himself, and being gathered to him. And so that's the promise. What was your question again, Alyssa? I forgot now.
You were
Oh, yes,
that was
liturgy.
great, though.
Okay,
I love
yes.
that. But also about sort of
The
the
liturgy.
Slavonic
That's right.
and the Byzantine,
Yes.
and how do you
Okay.
put it all
Okay.
together?
I'm back. I'm
Yes.
back. Okay. So so the reason why I went that route is because, I think that every generation has this opportunity to be true, right? To what we've inherited. And sometimes to be true to the actual meaning of a message requires for you to understand that it has to be localized in a language and a context that um, that will actually deliver that message most effectively, right? And so I think the meaning is Christ. The meaning is the gospel. That's the one that we are. He is the one we are wed to. That's the one that the church is to be faithful to. Or in translation theory, we call that the third text, right? That's the actual meaning that is suspended, almost like Christ the Logos, suspended above languages and above these other barriers between humanity, right? And so, so I think for liturgy, what we're aiming to do is localize it to the Chinese people, to translate more than just word for word. Okay, this is what this word says. Let me find the closest approximate, which on its own already is very difficult, as um, many have said, like, every translator is a traitor, right? You're always betraying one language as you're trying to localize it into the next. But you have an obligation to your audience to make sure that it is something that they actually understand as they are, right? Come as you are. And so that's what I think when we're doing liturgical translation, for me, I wash my hands thoroughly, right? I go and I get out all of my Bibles and all of my resources, and I call up all of the scholars who will still answer my calls, and we get together and we make sure that we find the meaning and we localize that meaning without compromise. And musically, I think what that means is trying to find emotional equivalence, but also not betraying, the timelessness of church tradition in music. And so, I think Nazo might have mentioned this, but some of the references that we have are, Chinese folk music. Other than that, there are also a lot of ways we're trying to be redemptive with Chinese music, because Chinese, folk music was the go-to mechanism for a lot of thought control and brainwashing, especially in the 50s, 60s, and through the Cultural Revolution. It was how really a whole 3-4 generations of people were sort of subjugated. And so taking music and really redeeming it for Christ and for for the kingdom's purposes, that's something that we really care about. And so, yeah, having those references to Chinese folk music, but then allowing for our tradition to still continue operating as a passport, right? So that your Chinese Orthodox inquirer, if they do end up in a Greek church or in an Antiochian church or a OCA church, that they would be able to follow and actually hear those references and understand the motifs and feel at home, and that music operating as, I think as a visa, right, or as a passport, is going to allow them to feel more integrated everywhere. And that's why it's important to not be a super purist about it, I think, and to really introduce a lot of those elements, at least at this stage, this sort of early stage of developing resources for the Chinese Orthodox Church around the world.
I love that. I love that passport concept, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I converted when I was pregnant with my first child, and I would just
Mm.
stand in church and pray, like so grateful that she would be at home in every Orthodox church, right? And then
Yeah.
later I figured out, well, actually, she really feels at home in the Slavonic. And so, now we're in the Greek church for a while. Now she feels at home everywhere. So it works out. But
Yeah.
it's true, like, you do want to feel that resonance when you walk
Mm.
into any church anywhere on earth. And in order to do that, you need a little bit of each tradition in your
Mm.
own tradition. And I think that's beautiful. And I think that it's really a lovely insight to bring into this project and to sort of add that gift for those people who are able to discover orthodoxy through this beautiful liturgy that you've put together. I'm just delighted about the entire thing, I have to say. But so, what is the hardest part of this project?
Um, Gosh.
I mean, I feel like all the parts are hard
All
in
the
a
parts
way.
are hard.
All of it's hard, right? Like you
Um,
said, just finding the right word,
yeah,
sort of academically without getting into sort of a very
yeah,
spiritual, poetic angle, right? Like
mm,
that's another layer, and then there's another layer and another. Like, what are
yeah,
you? But sort of based on just sort of your experience with your own gifts. Like, I think you have a lot of gifts in terms of lyrics and music and translation. Like this is kind of your home base. This is your breathing, right? This is what you
yeah,
do.
yeah.
Um, what's the hard part for you?
Probably twofold. On a functional level, it's hard to trust God for the right people to just show up at the right time, because sometimes we make we make year-end goals and we make our OKRs and we think, okay, gosh, it'd be great to get this project done, but if we need a choir of Chinese speakers who actually care about our tradition and are not just for hire, like I think there's such a difference. We want people who sincerely care, right, about this project to come along and join us in the recording and things like that. Or, for other projects too, it's like, oh gosh, I'd really love an extra translator right now. God, can you give us one? And He always does, but in His own timing. And so being patient as we wait for the right personnel in such a small pond, right, of people who are potentially interested or potentially qualified, that's always difficult. But that's changing, and so I'm just trying to be patient through that. And again, if you have any gifts to offer in Chinese ministry, or if you have anything you want to do to help us, please speak up and email us and talk to us. It's always appreciated. The other part is just a personal integration, trying to be what I'm doing, right? And being about what I'm doing and being honest and a fully integrated person, and letting this change me as I'm trying to quote unquote serve and busy myself in the kitchen. Um, the spiritual part of it is tough, because it really I'm so far from who I want to be, and I feel so grotesquely, I don't know, um, disqualified many times a day with my own walking out of my own faith and my own issues, and trying to resolve my own past, and trying to not be overly concerned about my own future. And yeah, and with all the unsettled, untamable pieces of life, I think oftentimes it's very easy to preach one thing and be about another. And so I am actively trying to keep up with what God is doing through us, and trying to be a consistent person and allowing God to also work on me. So that's where
Well,
those are the tough things.
and that's a lot to live up to, frankly. I mean, it really, like, and my guess is that when you say that to people, they kind of nod and go, "Oh, no, 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 don't worry about it." But it's true. God is working through you in this beautiful way, and it's very hard to be worthy of that. And you know that there are other people out there. There are all these monks who are doing such a good job of praying all the time, and here you are working all the time. But I mean, it's the working is important too, and I think it's
Yeah.
transformative as well. And
Yeah.
there's a website about baking prosra, and he says that as you're kneading the dough, like you're the one who's being transformed. It transforms your own
Yes.
heart, and that's
Absolutely.
you, right? Like
Yeah.
that's everybody who's working in any kind of ministry. I think it really is true that if you're pouring yourself into it, that is a form of prayer, and it is working on you, and it is transforming you. But
Yeah. I love the Theotokos and thinking about her as our missionary, and our first missionary, and thinking of, her at the Annunciation, which, I love the version where it's the evangelization of Mary, right?
yes,
And just that self-evangelization. And I really do think that, maybe I'm in this field because I'm so thick and I need to be I just need to be evangelized to over and over and over again. And so this
God
is the
just
only
dropped you
way
in
to
the
keep me
middle of it.
here.
He put you right in the heat of it
Just
because
to
you needed it.
marinate this
I
one.
love that.
Okay.
I love that. Marinate her in it. Put her in the middle of a
Yeah.
bunch of holy people. Absolutely. Amen.
Yeah.
Well, one of your biggest fans, I believe, is on the line. Actually,
Oh my gosh.
Miss Christina Wenger from Pennsylvania is on the line. Christina, are you there?
I am. Hello to both of you. I love when my friends talk to each other.
Oh,
Hi, Christina. Welcome to the
hello.
program.
Thank you so much. I have a question for you, Cassiani. How is it that you are able to manage doing the amazing, incredible work that you do and still be such a wonderful mama to your two little people? I admire that so much about you. How do you manage it?
I manage the guilt mostly. I just feel because honestly, I think the guilt is just always there and I always feel like I'm not giving them enough. So I don't manage it very well actually. But what I do want to do better is to be, I don't, there's no other way to say it that's not cliche, but to be more present at all times with them, and to kind of
Mhm.
really take on their perspective more, and to honor them more as full people, like really, really full humans, and to not have so much pride as a parent. I think
Mhm.
prideful parenting is the cause of many problems in the world. um,
Yes.
so trying to walk out humility, even as I'm disciplining them, is very difficult. So I'm working on it. Thank you, but
Well,
I'm
from
not
what I
there
see,
yet.
you're doing a beautiful job. Thank you so much for setting an example to other working moms and also at the same time working so diligently on this incredible project that you've been given. You have two very big jobs and you're doing a great job.
Amen.
Christina, you're the best. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you,
You can call in
Christina.
anytime.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Love you
Christina.
both. Have a good night.
Good
You
night.
too.
I do think that is the huge spiritual challenge of parenting is that,
Yeah.
you have so much, you have this authority, right? And it's like,
Yeah.
no, we have to
Yeah.
be obedient. We have to be
Oh
humble,
gosh.
obedient
Yeah.
people. And how do you humbly and obediently lead these adorable small people? And, I look forward to the day when you and your people come to visit me because I need to meet them and I want to hang out with them a little bit. But Cassiani,
Let's
also,
talk
I do
about
want
it.
to say to our audience before time is up,
Yeah.
one of these days you're going to hear about a musical that Cassiani has written that has nothing to do with the Chinese language division. There's always like you're so lovely because you are so full of energy and you're doing so many things and you do them very well. And I'm just excited. I'm going to be watching you and seeing all the wonderful things that you're doing. And Cassiani, thank you for coming on the program tonight. Will you come back again another time?
If you'll still have me
Yes,
anytime,
please. Yes,
anytime.
please.
Thank you
Because
so
I feel
much
like we
for
just started
everything. I
scraping the
know.
beginning of it. Like there's
I
so much
know.
more to talk about. Oh my goodness. Cassiani, thank you so much for coming on the program. I so appreciate it. And thank you to our listeners for joining us tonight. And come back next week and we'll meet another Everyday Orthodox Christian. Good night.